Okay guys, give me a break, man here. And the other day I made a video that was quite well received regarding my opinions about racism. And it was kind of an indirect response to flip-flopping or something. I purposely didn't connect it, respond to flip-flopping directly because I was kind of annoyed by his video. Yeah, it's maybe not fair, you know, so that's my first impression of him, is just him complaining about racism in Japan. I was thinking about this though the other day. I came to Japan a single man when I was in my early 20s, and Japan was a great experience for me as a young person, and I would say I was treated very, very well. He came to Japan, and I came willingly, of course. He came to Japan unwillingly as a married man. I don't really know his... I think he's married to a Japanese. I don't really know that... and he came unwillingly. Did I say that? Okay, so anyway, so of course we're coming at Japan in very different situations, and he's white, coming from maybe in a country from America, and maybe he was just used to, I don't know, being treated differently there. As a Hispanic in America, I've always felt, you know, I was always kind of annoyed by the "where are you really from" kind of question. So for me, being asked "where are you from" in Japan kind of didn't bother me because I'm not supposed to fit in exactly. So, but anyway, today what I want to do is on my left here, I've got on my right, on your, well, anyway, over here, there's a guy who's been here. How long have you been here now?
I've been here about, well,
I'll change your voice. You can
about 15, 16 years at least.
16 years.
At least,
So a little bit less than I have. And I thought it would be interesting to ask him off the cuff. He knows about... He hasn't seen any of the videos, right? You haven't seen any of the, he hasn't seen any of the videos, except that joke video I did with Maggie saying all humans are the same. And I thought it would be interesting to ask him some questions and let him give you his experience. I'll give you a little information about him. He's white. He's white and about the same age as I am. And I guess that's all you need to know. And he's been here 16 years, okay? So just ask him some brief questions, and this is not unrehearsed or anything, okay? Because I want you guys to get a fair opinion, and he's probably going to say some things that are very different from... Well, anyway, we'll let him talk. Okay. So, blunt question from the beginning. Do you think Japanese are racist? Be honest. This is not... Yeah, I mean, he's a joker, so it's like me, so...
Japanese would be, if you're arriving in Japan, you wouldn't necessarily see any racism, except unless you needed to get an apartment or you wanted to...
Yeah, you can be completely honest.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, you're not going to see racism outright until you start living here and needing to get things or having to interact more with people.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, so that guy who you're talking about sounds like if he wasn't keen on coming to Japan, he's going to definitely come across stuff that you're not going to have in America. They wouldn't be allowed in America.
Right. Yeah. So there are definitely different laws. Yeah, it's definitely different. Okay. I'm going to let him talk. I'm going to keep myself out of this as much as possible. Have you ever had rocks thrown at you?
I haven't had rocks thrown at me, but I've had little kids come up and try to punch me. And I've had
really?
when I
like maliciously.
Well, obviously, they're interpreting something from their parents. I mean, they're not just deciding to come up and hit me.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, they're learning it from
but this
somewhere.
is, that's not all the case. I mean, 99% of the kids are saying hello and being happy to friendly. I mean, but occasionally you have something like that. What was the question again?
No, that was just the only question.
Oh, throwing rocks at people. Yeah.
Throwing rocks at people. Okay. Have you ever seen a sign that says "No gaijin allowed"?
I haven't. I mean, I've seen the signs, not at a place I want to go to. I've heard them. They're at onsens, the hot water saunas.
Hot saunas.
Sometimes, but that's from what I hear is because the Russian sailors get out of control.
Okay.
And I've also like at some of the hostess places, they'll say Japanese only.
So mostly brothels and sex-related places.
Well, and hot springs.
And hot springs. Okay.
But I mean, along those lines, when I was renting an apartment. They have books with all the available apartments. So I went down to the real estate agents and opened a book to the ones that said they were open, ready, available. And the guy, one after the other, they kept saying that it's no longer available. And then the guy who ended up being my real estate agent said we were driving around. And he was showing me places that were available, but in fact, it wasn't a matter of being available or not. It was a matter of whether the landlord had specifically said it's okay to have gaijin there. And he said 99% of the people say absolutely no gaijin, no matter what. So I mean, that's a form of racism, but most Japanese have this idea. They see, some Hollywood movie. They just think everyone in America is carrying guns and people are crazy, and they just have this warped view of what the rest of the world's like. So it's a form of racism, but it's also just like racism. It's a form of just ignorance. They don't know what's going on.
Okay, here's something that struck me about Mike's video. He said in it that he went to I think a city office, and my impression from the video is that he didn't understand what they were talking about. But when he walked away, another foreigner came up to him and said, "You know what they were saying?" And he said, "No." And he said, If only he knew how much we hate foreigners."
Oh, really?
Which I highly doubt. It's a completely, he doesn't know what the guy said. Obviously, it's all hearsay. But my question to you is: have you ever felt that Japanese people hate foreigners?
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, anyone who's in Japan for a while, you're going to come across, not Japanese on the whole. I mean, that's a pretty broad thing. But there are people who do not like foreigners. They prefer not to have foreigners around. Definitely, if you can sit on a subway. It's not the case so much now, but 10 years ago,
yeah,
you sit on a subway and people will move away, get up, stand up, and move to another seat.
Really?
Yeah, really. It's
I remember people not sitting next to me, but not people moving.
No, I've had people move. I've had people. The whole place is crowded. There's 2 seats on either side of you. No one sits down beside you. It doesn't happen all the time, but things like that happen. And that's not even racism. Sometimes it's just half the time would be they're worried that you're going to try to talk to them in English, and they don't feel their English is good enough. So
I'm glad you said that, because
it's not necessarily racism, but there's things which, especially if I don't know what the guy you're talking about, but he might take that as racism, right? Mm. So there's things that you could read as being racist when actually that's not really what the problem is. It's just a matter of Japanese are very shy usually and not forward in approaching foreigners generally. So things like that.
The English issue is important. I think a lot of my impression is a lot of Japanese are kind of embarrassed by their inability to speak English after being taught for so long.
Well, I think if you're an American, it's hard to remember that America's. I mean, it's not hard, but I mean, you just forget that you're in a very diverse country. With people, you see people from different countries all the time. It's just completely normal. Whereas in Japan, especially outside any big city, you don't see anyone except Japanese. So whenever you see non-Japanese, it's like seeing it's seriously like seeing someone from a UFO land. It's just shocking for some of these Japanese people, especially if they've been studying English for 10 years. All of a sudden, they start thinking like, "Oh no, what can I say? Or am I going to say this correctly?" And they get all confused and worried about it, so they just try to avoid you.
He brings up something. I'm just going to show your shoulder. Just show your shoulder. He's really there, and he doesn't want to show his face because he's a gay porn star, and he doesn't do gay porn anymore.
Yeah.
No, but he brings up something that is very different. I traveled in South America for about a year and a half, on and off, 2 different trips, and one time 10 months, one time 11 months, and in South America, in Central South America, I went through all the way from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, Chile. And foreigners are really friendly to foreigners when you're traveling, right? But in Japan, it's almost like dogs and their own pissing territory, one of the first things I noticed here coming to Japan, even I still remember this 18 years ago, was that foreigners were not friendly to you at all. Foreigners would not talk to you. Did you have that experience, or what do you think about that?
Well, again, I think it's a very Japanese thing because.
I'm talking about foreigners and foreigners.
Yeah, I know, but we're not. But I think when you're on the trail or traveling around, I think that's the case whether in Europe or wherever. You see other foreigners, you all know you're traveling around, and it's easy to it's these people are going to be able to speak English. Whereas in Japan, if you've been living here for a while, the last thing you want to do. I mean, even wouldn't be rude to anybody, but I really don't want to meet someone who's just gotten off the boat, and have all these crazy, silly old questions that I've answered probably 100 times already. You just not I wouldn't be rude, but it's just I can see why some people would just like, hey, here's a newbie, here's a green thumb, and I don't want to be bothered with this guy. So I mean, although there are a bunch of real jerks who are openly rude against other foreigners, they think they like to be in their own little world, Japanese world. But
so a lot of foreigners like the special
the feeling of specialness they have by being the only foreigner in the area.
So one of the problems I was telling my coworker is that part of the problem with foreigners in Japan is that Japanese let them get away with anything. I think that's mine.
Not anything, but
a lot though.
Well, Yeah, they'll if you make a mistake or don't take off your shoes or use chopsticks wrongly, they're not gonna. Most people won't say anything. They just think you just don't know.
I mean, what I meant mostly was like the rock star treatment.
Oh, yeah. Some guys will take advantage of Japanese, and like never pay for the food, and expect them to always help them, give them the money to do stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd say it's not so much the case now, but when we first got here, there was definitely some of the old crowd. If we're entering that old crowd, but we're talking an old crowd for people who got here way long ago when there was only one foreigner for every 200,000 Japanese. Those guys were like rock stars, and they just fell into this world where they thought they were the best. And so when more foreigners showed up, they were pissed off for some reason.
When I first came over, I remember I was still able to get $120 an hour for privates, and I came at the very end of the bubble. So people before me were getting that like normally. So people were making like, I would say maybe $7,000 a month. 5 to 7.
Yeah. No, I mean, way back a while back when Japan was still really closed off, people didn't realize there was a real need for English teachers in Japan. Yeah, if you could speak English, then you were set. You could make a lot of money that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway,
what about relationships? Have you felt? What does racism? Well, I'll just put it out there: racism and romantic relationships.
I can't say. I mean, it would be, if anything, it's reverse racism, because I mean, you're being non-Japanese.
I said that too.
Being non-Japanese, you're at an advantage in Japanese people's eyes. You're this glamorous foreigner, and you can speak English, which I've been studying for years.
We're talking about males.
Oh, with other males.
What about no?
What?
Like gay.
Oh yeah, males.
No, I'm talking.
Well, so am I.
No, men here have it easy, or used to at least. And he's blonde and blue-eyed, so But what about women? Foreign women. Now, of course, we can't speak firsthand.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it goes the same. It goes the same way for if you're a decent-looking woman here. I think so.
Even if you're not a decent
well, it's the same for guys. I mean, you see a lot of undecent-looking guys getting pretty nice-looking girls. So.
What about the perception? There was I was talking to my friend Shot America, a user here on YouTube, and she was telling us about a Gaijin girl who was thought to be a prostitute just because she was blonde. They thought she was a Russian prostitute.
Yeah. No, I mean, from what I've heard, especially if you're blonde-haired, then you have to, if anything, you have to be very careful, because this is, I'm just saying from hearsay or from what I've heard, is that, in Japan, a big it's not racism, but a problem is among Japanese girls too, is that there's a lot of pervy guys. So if you're on a crowded train, or if you're living by yourself, or anything like that, you have to be, I think, way more careful than you'd have to be in America, and it's in a similar situation, because Japanese guys, the only time a lot of these guys have never traveled overseas, their view is a Hollywood view of blonde-haired girls in these. They'll
sleep with you at the top.
They're all nymphos and there's that English girl who was killed last year.
Right.
Some guy stalking a girl and then end up killing her. I mean, that's just one. It doesn't apply to everybody, but girls do have to be more vigilant here, I think, for that type of kind of pervy behavior. Guys, you hear about older guys who have a panty collection.
Yeah.
Just things that you don't hear about in America very often.
That's true. All right. Let's see. Anything else? Any instances or experiences of racism stick out in your memory? 17 years, remember? 15, 16 years?
Well, I mean, you'd have to let me think a little bit. I can't think off the top of my head, but there's plenty of times where I've, like, it's small little things that, if you take the wrong attitude, you could easily start really getting pissed off, because there's a lot of little things that if you like sitting on a train, people shying away from, even if you're speaking Japanese, well, they'll get all flustered and act like they can't understand you. So things like that were it's not racism, but it's a frustrating place to be sometimes.
The most frustrating thing for me is when I'm speaking Japanese and I go into a store with another Japanese person, they will almost automatically always ignore me and talk to the Japanese person because they just can't believe I speak Japanese.
Yeah, but Japanese people as well. I mean, it's also cultural things. Japanese people will sometimes, unless they're properly introduced to the other person, won't ever talk to the person.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, if you're walking down the street and if there's a group of Japanese walking down the street and one of them happens to meet another person that she knows on the street, everyone else will ignore that person.
Yeah,
only the people who know each other.
Yeah, and what they'll do, even then, they'll say, if your friend, let's say, is John, but John hasn't met the other people directly, they'll say to you, "What does John do?" Instead of saying to John, "What do you do?" So yeah, it's just a different type of cultural thing.
Yeah, that's something we don't do in English. We don't talk directly. I mean, we speak directly to each other, right? But in Japanese, you'll ask, what's your friend do?" Right? He's sitting right there, right? Right in front of you. But no striking.
Yeah, we'd have to come back and let me think a little bit. I mean, there are examples, but I'm not doesn't come to me right now.
That's good enough for now. And if Pablo over here ever Thor. Okay, Thor. His name is Thor. No, if you think of something next time I get you on cam.
Okay.
Well, all right. Thanks a lot for talking.
Sure.
You want to show me your hand? Okay, there it is. Look. All right. So there's another person's perspective for those of you who are interested in coming to Japan. There you go. Thanks for watching.